All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the stream. Hope everybody is doing well tonight. I certainly am feeling better. So we are going to pick up where we left off last week and see how far we get tonight. I'm hoping to kind of wrap up most of this sort of bug fixing from our refactor tonight in preparation for our animation system. So that's kind of the next thing on the roster. 3D Code Warrior, good to see you. Hello. Before we jump into that, let me just take a quick second to thank our elite partner, Javier Lazaran, followed by our partners, Scribbles Inc. and Matt Osgard. They are the highest tiers of subscription over on YouTube memberships and Patreon, followed by the list of supporters you see here scrolling across the screen. They are a combination of the other tiers of support over on YouTube memberships and Patreon, as well as Twitch subscriptions. So thank you all very much for your support. I greatly appreciate it. It means a lot to me, and it helps me cover the costs associated with running the channel, things like software licenses, hosting fees, things of that nature. So thank you all very much for that support. It's greatly appreciated. And, of course, I want to give a big thank you to all of you guys, the viewers, whether you're joining us on the YouTube side or the Twitch side. I appreciate each and every one of you guys, because if it weren't for you guys, this project and this channel would not exist. So thank you guys for being here. Spiro, good to see you. You were first on the YouTube side, but you are second on the Twitch side. But thank you for being here, buddy. I appreciate you. Quick shout out, by the way. For those of you who aren't following Spiro, he's always doing kind of out-of-the-box stuff on his channel. He goes over a lot of tech news, the latest, greatest happenings in the industry. He talks a lot about AI, and he also does a lot of interesting outside-of-the-box thinking when it comes to programming. For example, he's making a game whose engine is written in C and is essentially compiled to WASM. And it is using the browser DOM as the renderer, right? So speaking of out of the box thinking, that's pretty out of the box. Very cool stuff. So if you're not following him, definitely go do it. LSR, good to see you. How's it going? Welcome. Pale Blue Zebra, good to see you as well. Welcome, welcome. All right, so for some reason, my window sizes are a little bit off here, so just bear with me just for a second while I fix that so I can actually see more than like 3 lines of chat at a time. There we go. All right. Okay, so as you can see here on the screen, we are up and running again, which is awesome considering all the work that we've done. There are some graphical artifacts that I think I'm going to try and work through tonight. But my larger priority tonight is actually to sort of eliminate some of the dead code and some of the temporary stuff that we'd put in place, so that we can actually, start tying up this feature. And then if I've got bug fixes at the end of this stream, I probably am just going to log them, and we'll come back to them at a later time, or I'll handle them off stream. Because I really want to get moving and get going on the animation system. That's the next semi-large feature that we've got to add. And I think it's actually the last thing that we need to add to the engine before we can actually start making the engine, right? Everything else is game systems. So that's kind of an exciting place to be. We'll finally be able to, sort of get back to game dev. So, a couple things that we're looking at here. We do have the stream converted, or the stream. We do have the scene, rather, converted over to use all of the new storage buffers that we have in place. And you're seeing that in action here. So, all of these objects here are using transforms from the transform storage buffer. The directional light, even though it looks completely foobar right now, is actually being read from the transform buffer, or the lighting buffer, rather. And so we've got those things working. They're hooked up. They're ready to go. It's just a matter of tweaking some stuff, just to kind of get things to look proper once again. So I'm not 100% sure what's going on here with the water plane, but it looks like, directional lighting in general is kind of messed up, right? So one way we can verify that is to just go into lighting only mode, And you can see here that right about at the midpoint, just kind of like it's all brightly lit on that side and not lit at all on this side. And in this middle here, this is kind of what we'd expect, right? So there's definitely something going on with that. And then we can also see that, our directional light itself seems to be kind of hitting, hitting straight on from this side, right? When it really should be coming from up above at a slight angle. It's a little easier to see actually on the tree. So you can see here it's kind of extreme, right? So we've got that to figure out. I noticed that our shadows aren't showing, and I think there's a couple of things in there that may be the reasoning behind that. But other stuff seems to be working, so we can actually move our sort of character around. You can see our BVH is constantly recalculating, so that is working as expected as well. Yeah, so I think most of our systems are actually in place and working as expected. Potham, thank you so much for the tier 1 sub. I appreciate that. 8 months. It's been a while. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Thank you for the support. Out of the box thinking, the literal advertised use case for WASM. Yeah, I mean, so yes, but the out of the box thinking portion of it is more the rendering to the DOM, all right? Immediate mode GUI flushes the DOM every frame, rebuilds it. WASM only is uses WASM only as numbers numbers in, numbers out, not even strings, no third-party libraries at all. So yeah, out of the box is what I mean by that is he's not using your typical graphics representation, right? So he's using the DOM with no hardware acceleration. So he's not using GL or anything like that. Is this the mad lad who made Minecraft in CSS? I don't believe he's done that, but Spiro, that would be the next challenge for you, I think. You can do it, buddy. Not done it yet. Yeah, exactly. Matt Oscard, good to see you. Yeah, no, I am still streaming. Good to see you. How have you been? It's been a while since I've seen you on stream. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, Spiro, you should totally do that, man. Challenge accepted, right? Can I accept the challenge on your behalf? I don't think that's the way that works, but I feel like I've just done it for you anyways. Awesome. Okay. You accept. Sweet. All right. I'll be tuning in for that one. Okay. Okay. So, let's see. This directional light issue, I haven't really gotten to the bottom of that. I was kind of debugging that off stream. I'm not 100% sure what that is. I think it's probably something stupid. So, we'll come back to that one if I have time. But like I said, as you can see, it looks like the directional light is kind of coming from this direction over off this way, when really it should be coming from like the top, right? So we'll have to figure that out. But in the meantime, I actually want to go through and just kind of eliminate some stuff and talk about what I did off camera, because we were not live yesterday, because I still was kind of under the weather. I am feeling much better though, so there's that. So one thing that I went ahead and did is I knocked a to-do off the list, actually here. So unify all material shaders at the fragment level. That has actually been done. So vertex will have in bone IDs and in weights additionally. So the vertex shader will have to vary somewhat, and that is essentially how we're going to hook up our animations, right? So that's just in preparation for the animation system, but we already have that working, right? And then any get shader for material type call should include whether or not it's for the static or skin mesh, and return accordingly. Do we actually have that anymore? We do. Get shader. get shader for material type. Okay, so it looks like we do. Oh, you know what? This register base and unregister base, and register instance and unregister instance, I think are the only places that use that, and those aren't actually doing anything anymore, I don't believe. Or are they? Let's see, kmaterial renderer, register base, right? So we've got the declaration, the definition. We are actually calling it in material create. Okay, so we are using that at least for the base. Okay, so we can't completely eliminate that just yet. I was hoping we could actually eliminate the function, but we actually can't do that. All right, so you'll see here in the code that I actually have this commented out, and I left it commented out just kind of while I was unifying everything. But now whether we have a standard or a water shader, they both point to the material standard shader, which we'll probably wind up renaming, right? So we can actually move these both to be under the same case. And that is that. And then at the top, let me actually just get rid of that left off. At the top, where we are creating the shaders, we have the one for, you know, just your standard static meshes, and then we have the one for your animated meshes or your skin meshes, right? And so those are essentially identical. The only difference is the vertex format, right? So we'll just have to make sure that those are the same. But all this stuff for the water material shader, that can be eliminated because that is all the same shader now. So that's a whole bunch of dead code that we can get rid of. And blended materials are going to be the same thing, but I'm going to leave that there for right now. Blended materials, I haven't really decided how those are going to work yet. We're going to need those for terrains, but I haven't fully digested how I want to do that. And we can actually start the game development without blended materials or terrains. So I'm going to put that off at least for now. Let's see. Good, thanks for asking. Hard to keep up sometimes. I totally understand that. Yeah. Especially since we're over 300 episodes deep now. Yeah. I would imagine it is a little hard to keep up with. It's a little hard for me to keep up with even sometimes, but you know, it is what it is. Let's see. Hey, I'm not familiar with your engine. Does it have scripting? No, and it likely won't. We do have a custom storage format file that we wrote. We could do that as sort of a. I've gone back and forth on this a couple of times. We could add a scripting language, but that generally tends to not be all that valuable of a thing. And the reason is because you have to write all the logic for that scripting language, right, to actually support it. It's a massive vector for bugs. It's a lot of overhead in terms of runtime. And generally speaking, you could just write that same code in C and it'll be infinitely faster, right, than having some sort of interpreted language. So if I were to do that, it would probably be in the form of a plugin that was optional, and I would not include it in the core of the engine, nor make it required for any templates that I make with the engine. So we might do that just as a learning exercise in the future, you know, just to kind of say, hey, this is how you would go about making a scripting language, right? And we might do it for educational purposes, but like if I do it, it's not gonna be part of the core. The other thing is, you know, one of the benefits you get out of a scripting language is, you know, the ability to sort of make changes to it as you're running the game, right? But with hot reloading that we have set up, we can do that with C. So there's not really that benefit's kind of gone too. JavaScript would work? Ugh, that's a bannable offense. No, I'm just kidding. Not bannable, but I want to swing the ban hammer. No, I mean, the only JavaScript we use here is for the item editor for right now. But yeah, certainly not in the runtime. Permaban forever, how dare you, sir? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we will not be putting JavaScript in here. If I were to go with any scripting language that was like a pre-existing one, it would either be Lua or C#. One of those two. Or we would make our own. But either way, that would be a plugin. It would not be part of the core game. All right. So do we actually do register instance anymore? I don't think we do. Material instance create register instance. That's actually kind of funny though, because so the material system has that, but this doesn't actually do anything because we don't have that sort of binding anymore. Yeah, we can get rid of this one. Let's simplify our API, right? K-material renderer set point lights. We already got rid of this. The lighting system now handles that. We don't need that anymore either. So we can get rid of both of those things. Do not need that. And then also don't need this comment. That's gone as well. Okay, so I think that means the material system is going to have errors in it now. So we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. And there's one more thing in here. Yeah, we don't need that. Okay. All right, so the way that we have combined this is really most of the changes are in the fragment shader. There were a couple small changes in the vertex shader too. Actually, you know what? Let's hit the vertex shader first because there's less changes here. So in the vertex shader, the only real difference between the two is if our material type is 0, which is basically a standard material, then we just use the texture coordinates that are passed in here within the vertex, right? So just this guy, right? But if we are of type 1, then we actually use the position in conjunction with the tiling that we've set up. So along the X and the Z axis. And that is how we set up our texture coordinates, right? So we actually just use that to sort of dynamically calculate that. I may switch this in the future to just do this when we generate the geometry. But for right now, it is actually a property of the material, so we treat it as a shader property so that we can adjust it dynamically if we want to. I don't know that we'll ever have to do that in runtime though, so we may at some point be changing the way that works. But basically, material type 0 is standard, material type 1 is water, right? So there's that, and that's really the only change to the vertex shader, other than just a couple of unifying changes between stuff that was in the water shader and in here in terms of some of this was written slightly to be a little bit less repetitive in one versus the other, so we just kind of unified those changes. But other than that, there's not really a whole lot of changes to that one. Where most of the changes actually exist are, and I'm going to open it up here on the left, is here. And we're not done with this by a long shot, right? There's still lots of commented stuff because I'm still debugging this. But for all intents and purposes, we are like 95% of the way there. So essentially we have a couple switches in here based on whether we are material type standard, which again is 0, or mat type water is 1. That's just another thing that we pass in the base material now. And so depending on those two things will depend on how we use the normal, tangent, and texture coordinate. So for the water type, well, for both types, the normal and tangent are just kind of used here. But for the water type, the texture coordinate gets distorted by the du/dv map. That's part of how that works, right? So that's how we apply the distortion. And you can see here that's how we sort of handle that. And then we take that texture coordinate and we use, or we feed it into the normal, right? And so the normal itself is directly affected by that. And then, every other map sort of is handled a little bit differently depending on what type of material we're dealing with. So everything inside this branch, right? And I need to get rid of some of these branches, right? Because we don't want to have too many of those. But everything in this branch is basically the old or the pre-existing standard material code, right? So nothing in here has really changed other than the removal of this local normal stuff, because we use that same logic for both up here. So this is just how all those maps are applied, and then all of the water specific stuff is in here, right? So there's not really too much craziness or unexpected stuff as far as that goes. And then I believe that is the only thing that switches between the two, right? It's just sort of how we get the color, right? So the color of the surface, the albedo, if you will, of the water is based off the reflection, the refraction, the generation between those two, applying the distortion, calculating the Fresnel effect, to get the proper blend between those two, mixing some color into it, which we do need to make configurable. And then we just literally treat that as the albedo, as if we'd read it in from a texture map. And then from there on, everything is exactly the same, right? And so that just makes it a lot easier to work with, a single shader that kind of does both versus having different shaders, right? So the fragment shaders have been unified. The vertex shaders will be mostly unified, although there will be a difference in vertex layout. And of course, when we go to apply the animations, that'll be different as well. That'll be extra code that actually exists in the vertex shader. As far as I'm aware, or as far as I can think forward to it now, all of our animation logic should be all in the vertex shader. We shouldn't have to do any of it in the fragment shader. So we'll see if we can figure out a way to unify that nicely as well. All right. If you think about it, check out AngelScript. Has a C++-like syntax. I think it deserves more love. The HPL engine it uses. HPL engine uses it, and the guys that made it, it takes 2 forked Unreal Engine 5 to integrate it. Interesting. I realize now this sounds like an ad, but I swear I have nothing to do with it. No, that's fine. I don't mind checking out cool stuff. I'll open a tab here. Let me see. What was it called? AngelScript. Is this it? Kind of sounds like it. If that's the website, I'll take a look at it offline. I feel like that was something you used 15 years ago or so. Might have been. I don't know. I haven't ever used it, so I can't tell you. That's it? Okay, cool. I'll keep the tab open. I can look into it. Like I said, if I do wind up using something like that, it's going to be a plugin. It won't be something that I put in the core engine. Orshi, good to see you. How's it going? Welcome. Let's see. Just watched the meta announcement about their Horizon Worlds engine, which uses TypeScript, and I'm assuming it ends up JavaScript for VR games. Ouch. Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, TypeScript does transpile to JavaScript, so I'm not sure why they went the TypeScript route. Especially with, you know, the newer versions of JavaScript, TypeScript is almost rendered moot at this point. Singy, good to see you. How's it going? Welcome. Okay. So yeah, we've got some properties in here for sure that we need to integrate into the material itself for water. I'm not going to worry about those too much yet, but there's a lot of to-dos in here, like, hey, make this configurable, that we really need to figure out at some point. But yeah, that's essentially the unification of those. So for all intents and purposes, that bit is done. And all we need to do is essentially bug fix for tonight. So with that said, there are a couple of other things that I can think of that I think we're also using, or not correctly using, the transform system to get their transforms, right? And I think that's all going to be in the, let's see, I don't think the material render is going to have any of it. I think it's all going to be in the Lumina renderer. So I can only imagine how many to-dos I have in here. Oh, there's only 10. That's not too bad, considering this is brand new. Let's see. Okay. Here's a fix me that we can fix right away. Oh, this might actually be part of the problem. This one should be, so scene pass, I think we actually have directional light in here. So I went ahead and added that to all of the render data and all that. So we just use the K-light handle, which is an index into the light systems array, which also happens to be the index that we use in the storage buffer. So when we can literally just use the handle, and that becomes the index for both, right? So that makes things nice and convenient as far as that goes. Let's see, to do. These defaults really only need to be run once. Okay, we can come back to that one. All right, we know about the clipping plane stuff. We know about that. We know about that. That I'm not concerned about. Shadow map resolution I'm also not concerned about. Okay, configurable. So this is, let's see. I don't think we're going to have this be configurable, actually. I think we're just going to say we have 4 shadow map cascades and we're just done, right? All right, what about fix me's? So projection index, for now, that's always going to be 0. I think we're going to have to deal with that. Let's see. I don't think I'm going to do that. Let's see. Use to extract tiling wave strength, wave speed. These should be material properties in the SSBO. Okay, I remember having to hack something in here for this. Where we actually had to pull, like, grab a, let's see, a pointer to the material, and then we actually had to pull these properties here. And these are in the immediate data, and they probably shouldn't be. Because this is not the kind of thing that needs to change for every single draw call. It's really something that's like material specific, right? So whenever we're using water material, right, like every water plane that uses that material is going to have the same tiling, the same wave speed, the same wave strength, I think. Technically, this is a little bit more flexible doing it this way, but we may want to wind up actually changing that. I think I might leave that one for now, though, because it works. Multiple projection matrices. Don't need to worry about that for now. Not sure these can be done here. May have to do inside the loop below. Let's see. So this is... Okay, so this is having to do with shadow map stuff, which we don't know is actually working yet. I don't think it actually is. So that may be a problem. Aha, okay, this is kind of the stuff I was looking for here. So right now we have for our shadow static mesh immediate data, right? When we're rendering a static mesh for the shadow map, right now we're using map for identity for everything, which is obviously not right. We need to change that to be the actual material. Sorry, not material. The actual transform handle, right? So we should have like geodata transform, right? We should be using that instead of a model matrix, right? So where this is, if we go to definition on that, this really should just be U32 transform index, right? Is what that should be. And then transform index here, we just use, we just use the transform that's passed here, right? And then in the shader, we're actually going to have to change up how that works. So let's go ahead and do that because that is something that we absolutely need to change. Shadow static mesh shader. Let's see, that is actually going to be, that's going to be the vertex. This one. Okay. So we're going to change this to be uint, and we're going to do transform index, right? And then we don't need this comment. Whoops. We don't need that comment anymore. And then this is going to be transform index, and then we're going to have to go into, I think the way I'm going to handle this here is I'm going to go into, well, let me think about this. So, yeah, I guess we'll go into material standard. And I guess we'll probably use the vertex shader as the example here. And when we come down, we need to get the transforms, right? So this is going to be all transforms. I think for this one, this is all we're going to actually need. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this SSBO immediately after our global UBO data, similar to how we did in our other shaders, right? So we have binding 0 here for UBO, and then binding 1 for our global transforms SSBO. And then we can come down here, and we can index into that, so we can do global transforms, and then we'll do dot transforms, and then we'll index that. We'll say sub transform dot index, right? And that's all we need there. And just for good measure, I like to actually also include this in in the fragment shader. Here we go. So that is going to go right here, right? And again, set 0 binding 1. And then we have our binding 0 and 1 for our set 1. And those don't have to change. Technically, we don't even have to put this here. I just like to put it there just to keep it consistent. At some point, we're going to have includes that are going to do this for us, but we haven't gotten there yet. Let's see. Not only does the Meta Horizon engine use TypeScript for scripting, but it's riddled with AI 3D asset generation slop. Oh, that just sounds... Everything I hear about that just sounds worse and worse. MetaQuest Store already has too many slop games. I can't even imagine what it'll look like when there's slop engine ships. Yeah, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. That sounds awful. Thank you for the follow, by the way. I appreciate that. Welcome. Hello to you as well. Good day to you. Hope you're doing well. UG, I'm going to say. UG Rexian. Appreciate you being here. All right, so there is one more thing we need to change. And that is going to be the shadow static mesh shader configuration. So this down here, we have for the UBO, right? So we have that. And now we need one for storage. We don't need the data size. We do need the name of the storage buffer though. So what that's going to be is k-transform system. We can go into here. In fact, I think it's actually an H file. We can grab this. This is the name for it right here. So that when we go to look that up, we can look it up by name, right? So that is how we hook up the storage buffer. And I believe that's actually all we need to do. The data should just work from there. Okay. So there was, however, let's see, transform index. Here we go. Yeah. So where else are we doing dot model, right? There's only a couple places. So this is going to be another one. We're going to do transform index, and then here we're going to do geodata transform. And let's see. This one. Okay, so this one is actually for the terrain, which we haven't made these changes in. We should probably just go ahead and bite the bullet and do that too. So we'll see transform index. And then we'll do chunk. Wait, where were we getting? Oh, we didn't have anything hooked up for that before. It's not going to be from the chunk. It's going to be from the terrain. And then instead of model, right, we're going to say transform, right? So we'll go here to our render data. Whoops, that's the chunk render data. We want the actual terrain render data. And we're going to change this to k-transform, transform, right? Which we're going to have to fix that in the scene too, but that's fine. All right, so we can get rid of that fix me. And let's see. Here's another one. So this is for world debug immediate data. All right, so world debug, we're going to hold off on that. We want to make sure that all of our shader stuff works as designed first, and then we'll do the debug data, and then we'll do the editor gizmo, which we haven't actually seen the editor gizmo in action yet, but we'll get there soon. Let's see. It's kind of funny. AI has probably single-handedly killed the junior front-end developer role, but it's definitely given some job security for the time being for us cybersecurity folks. Well, I don't know that it's killed it though, right? Because like one thing it's also doing is it's like, I forget what the statistic is on this. Spiro had it the other day. And there is a relation to the greater amount of AI is used to generate production code, the more amount of bugs they have and security issues. So replace, it's a pretty strong term, right? Because you can put slop out there that kind of works, but it's going to be super bug laden and terrible and slow and just not right. I've seen juniors that can write better code. especially even in front end stuff, right? Like ChatGPT might be able to give you some basic ideas on how to do things sometimes. And sometimes it'll get it right, but I would never use code from there in production. All right. Okay, so that's that. Let's go over and fix. I could have swore that was going to throw a fit about the last change we just made having to do with terrains, but apparently not. Probably because we don't have it hooked up yet. So I guess that's fine. Let's run this and see what it looks like. Okay. So it looks relatively okay. I see that our reflection's wrong too, so we're gonna have to fix that. I don't see any shadow maps being generated though. So we may have to run a render doc on there just to see kind of what's going on with that, because there should at least be shadows being generated. There's definitely not. Okay. Let's crank up ye old render doc. Okay. Let's just launch new instance here. All right, and I'm just going to do that. Let's see if we even have the right resources bound or any of that stuff, because that stuff could also be hideously wrong. So we'll look at the shadow pass here. So I guess we can start with Cascade 0. That should be fine. Although, let me make sure the right things are being bound here. So we do have our 4 slices. Okay, so that's good. I don't see anything on them though, which is, that seems fine. Sure, why not? Let's look at the mesh viewer for this. So vertex shader in, of course, looks fine for these guys. However, VS out is not okay. Looks like it's all the way out here, which is interesting. So why would that be? Let's have a look at, let's go back to the vertex shader. And whoops. Let's look at the global UBO first. So we have our view projections here. Those do look like they're valid to me. So I think those are okay. Let's then look at so we have a transform index of 24. Okay. So if we then, let me think, why would this not be? Unless maybe the let me take a look at draw calls and stuff and see what we got here. Whoops. Yeah, it's like totally not visible at all. Are we failing any of these guys? Viewport and scissor looks fine. I'm not seeing any issue with this. So why is that not showing up? peculiar indeed. All right, so I guess we'll just leave highlight draw call on and have a look at. Okay, so we set call mode to none. We do have it enabled to write and test to the depth map. Viewport and scissor look valid. And then here is the geometry. Now that we know the index and vertex buffer data coming in is good, because we can take a look at the mesh viewer here and see the VS in is actually what we expect, right? That's all the tree leaves. So I know that's good. Here's the trunk of the tree, right? So we know that's good too.
What's this button do?
Thank you for the Prime sub. I appreciate that. 2 months. I really appreciate that support. Thank you so much. Let's see. Hello, what theme are you using in VS? Let's see. I did switch it lately. Add weight to dark. Unfortunately, though, it's not the same add weight that I'm using here. I was hoping for that, but it's not the same. So I may wind up switching it back to Groovebox. But yeah, we'll have to see where we land on that. I'm not 100% sold on it yet, but I don't really code in there. I use it just for debugging, so I'm not really too worried about it. Okay. So again, I feel like we might be doing something wrong here. And I have a feeling it's getting clipped, which is why we're not seeing it. Like it's behind the camera, essentially. Let me think. Would that be... I wonder if that would be... Directional line index. So there is... Oh, you know what? There is a spot in main. So we have the dir light here. So we're getting the directional light data. That includes the light and the direction. Maybe we have the direction backwards. I don't think we had to reverse it before, though. I don't feel like I should have to change any of this stuff because none of that stuff should have changed. Right, this stuff hasn't changed in quite a while. So if I go messing with that, it's going to definitely break it somewhere where it wasn't broken before. What has changed is the way that the directional light data itself is handled. One thing I could do we do have this, which is sort of our default direction for the directional light. Let me look in does that align with our default in here? I think I actually used it directly just so that I wouldn't necessarily have a problem or I have a reasonable default. So that is fine. Let's see. Okay, so when we create the directional lights, it's probably that. I guess I should probably debug it and find out, just to be sure. So let's do 2263, and I'm going to put a breakpoint here. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. All right, so here we have that initial value as we expect. Let's see what we read in. Do we get any weirdness? No. Okay, so that's not the issue then. We do directional like creates. I have verified separately that this does go into the storage buffer, but we can actually take a look at that ourselves here if we want. So we do have, I'm going to need something that actually references that though. Coming down to the forward pass, and we'll go to standard scene pass, meshes, and we'll just look at this first one. So lighting global, the directional light is the first thing. Whoops. It is the first thing in that buffer, right? So lighting global, here we go. So we can see here, let me expand this a little bit. So we can see here the very first element that we have in this buffer is indeed the color. So we've extracted this sort of color out of the scene. So this is as we expect, although, well, I think we ignore this though. I think we ignore the alpha for that. So I'm not too worried about that. And then we can see our data is correct here too. So that is not an issue. I know at least that's being read in correctly. Oh, what about our shadow distance and all that other stuff, though? That's actually a valid point, too. So our shadow distance is 100 there. It's 100 after reading it in. That's 5 after reading it in. That's 0.75. Okay. Which is also consistent with the settings that we have here, right? So we know that's correct. So we should be good as far as that's concerned. I guess one other thing I could do is take a look in this as well. If we go to our fragment shader, we'll need to look in our global settings and see what we have over here. Aha. Okay, so even if we were rendering to the shadow map correctly, this stuff is not getting processed over here. So that's an issue, for sure. So that's something we should definitely fix right away, because that's going to bite us. Even if that's not the issue right now, it's going to be an issue. So that's going to be... Let's see. How do I want to do... shadow dist. So we store that in the scene. We get shadow properties. I already have that hooked up, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So here we get those properties, right? So I suppose I could debug that point. And then we use those properties to set up our cascade splits and all that other stuff. However, I have a feeling where are we actually getting that stuff? Did we set it in the forward data anywhere? No, they're just kind of gotten and thrown away. Perfect. Well, that seems fine. Okay, so what we need is probably, I think that stuff's going to be in the forward pass data. So I guess we need render data, forward data. There it is right there. So shadow distance equals, actually, you know what? Instead of extracting these to different properties, let's just do that. Let's just do, because then we don't have like multiple copies of these floating around. All right, so let's actually just do render data, forward data, shadow distance. Right, and then we'll do the same thing here and here. And then we can use the same thing, oops, there and there and there. Okay. I'm not convinced that that's going to fix all the problems, but it should at least fix that one. So let me actually go to, let's see, are we still running? Yes, we are. I'm going to kill that. And we're going to take a new capture just to be sure that we've actually fixed that problem. Still not using GDB. Yeah, no, I started looking into it, but I'm nowhere near quick enough to be up using that on stream. It's just not happening right now. But I did start looking into it. So once I can get proficient enough with it to use it on stream, I probably will switch to it, which is going to be a pain when I start debugging on Windows, because I'll still have to go back to it. But I am going to use it with the 2E though. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know enough about it to know if it's going to be worth switching or not. To be completely honest. Learn a whole new language syntax to do basic stuff. I mean, you could argue the same with Vim, right? But I've gotten faster editing with Vim than I have anything else. So, you know, it's all relative, I guess. It's relative to how fast you can pick it up, and if you wind up gaining anything from it, right? Let's see, did I do standard pass? Okay, so I guess it doesn't really matter what I choose here. What I really want to look at is, yes, we do have these now. Oh, we didn't do shadow bias or use PCF. Render mode we know does work. Use PCF is off though. That's not a huge deal. But shadow bias should be there. It is using the forward data shadow bias. I guess that's another thing I guess we're just not filling out. Shadow bias is something that probably should be a scene specific setting as well. Default shadow bias. And let me guess, that's actually set as part of the renderer. Why do we set that in a C file? That's kind of dumb. Okay. Let's move that. Let's move that to here. That way I can go to Luminous Scene, and I'm actually going to modify this to also extract that property. So let's actually just move this to right. We'll just move another thing here. We'll do F32, and we'll do out shadow bias. Oh my god, I suck at typing today. And then we'll do out shadow bias equals scene shadow bias. We'll have to add that. Right, so we'll do F32 shadow bias, and then I guess we'll have to go to the header file and do the same thing here. F32 out shadow bias, and then go into the scene, and we'll do kind of the same thing as we have here, except we'll do shadow bias and then default shadow bias, and then we'll do shadow bias here. Right, and now that's completely hooked up. We have these just kind of plugged in here as magic numbers, and I'm not a huge fan of that. So let's actually go ahead and I'm actually going to, first off, I'm going to take this. And we're just going to do we're going to do that, but I'm going to set it to something slightly different so that we can see that it actually comes through correctly. And then I'm just going to grab these and go to here. And we'll do a define yeah, I guess, yeah, define, right, and then these will wind up being, oops,
you dingus.
I guess we should probably also say default on this. Right. Sure. All right. And then that means that we can come back in here and just do default shadow. Really? Okay. Default shadow distance, default
you dingus.
shadow fade distance, and default shadow split. Wait, default. Did we not do split? Molt? Yeah, I did. Code completion is just flipping out tonight, I guess. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. And thank you for the sub over in the YouTube side. I appreciate that as well. Welcome. Debugging was never meant to be textual IMO. Yeah, so GDB does have a it does have a TUI, right? Which is like a terminal user interface or text user interface. I forget what it's called, but it's basically a graphical user interface for a terminal, right? Similar to what Vim is. And that's what I plan on using if I switch to it. Off topic, how do you put pass group markers like plus shadow pass? Is it through Vulkan? Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. You're talking about all of these things here, like where I have prepare frame and it's colorized and all that stuff. Is that what you mean? Where I label all these? Yeah, okay. So that is actually through a Vulkan extension. And we have actually, probably the best place to look at this is in the Illumina renderer. So the way that I've hooked this up, let's see. Where did I put? Oh, of course I have debug 1,000 times in here. I guess probably, here we go. Debug label is the term I'm thinking of. So I've created this thing in my my renderer system called render begin debug label, right? So I have a begin and an end here somewhere. I think right there, right? And so this passes down to the Vulkan backend. And if we do debug label, this then calls this vk begin debug label, which is a macro that I created to essentially point to this function in a debug build, or a build where debug is enabled, right? So on release builds, this doesn't happen. And if we take a look at that, look at utils. If we take a look at that, that is using this vk debug utils label extension, right? And so we set up this structure, right, which is just a simple, S type. I forget what the second property is. A p next, which we're not using, and then a label name, which is just a string, right? And then you call command begin debug utils label extension. That's a function pointer that you have to load manually, right? Because it's an extension, you have to load it manually. But this allows you to pass in, that label info and start a label. So that's part of it. That's one thing that we use, right? The other thing that is extremely helpful, especially when you're debugging, is you'll notice that all of our resources have names, right? Because by default, you'll see things like, let's see, do we have resource inspector? We might have some things here that aren't named. Let's see, like command buffer, right? And then some number after it, or command pool, right? But you can see in here, we've got a bunch of other stuff that is named. Otherwise, you're just going to see like a whole bunch of pipeline layout 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Right? And you're not going to know what the hell it is. So the other thing that this extension allows you to do is, where is it? You can assign a debug object name, right? And so it works kind of the same way. You've got a structure that you fill out with some information. The Vulkan object type, which is important, right? So that'll be like command buffer or sampler or whatever the object type it is that you're trying to name. And then a handle to that, right, which is just a uint64t, or, that's, I think, that's what this particular extension requires, right? But it's nothing but just a void pointer as far as our function is concerned. And then again, an object name, right? And then you do that. And then RenderDoc actually uses this plugin, or extension rather. It uses that automatically. So it'll automatically map these names of things in here. So I forget what episode we set this up. But we did go through this. I don't remember whether it was when it was still like in tutorial series land or if it was when we converted to doing live streams, but yeah, it's all there. And it's been extremely useful. Yeah, this is the famous RenderDoc. Yep. So yeah, I hope that answers your question and helps. Have experience with GL object label, which labels resources in RenderDoc. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing, just for Vulkan. Yep. Can RenderDoc be used in combination with commercial game engines like Unity or Godot? I don't see why not. Games released with them, probably not, because there are ways you can kind of signal to not let RenderDoc capture stuff. And that's kind of a common thing. Because a lot of people don't want you using capture software to capture their production games. There's legal and moral implications with that. But for debugging, it's very powerful. I was wondering whether it's possible to label groups of commands like you do. Maybe GL's pop ID, push ID is the equivalent of it. I don't know if I ever did that in OpenGL. I think I only ever named resources. I don't think I ever actually did this. But this has been super helpful too. So like if I went to go write GL nowadays, I would look for a way to do this. Because just being able to group stuff together like this has been hugely helpful for sure. It's engine agnostic, captures all commands from the GPU, sent to the GPU directly. Yes, as long as you attach RenderDoc to the instance before it's initialized, yes. There's some things around that, but yeah, it captures OpenGL, Vulkan, and DirectX on Windows. But yeah, it doesn't really matter what engine or piece of software you're using, but there are ways to sort of block it from actually working. I forget what the flag is you have to set, but yeah, there's a way to do it. Okay. Let's see. Where was I? I don't even remember. Okay. We were here. Okay, so we got... Did we hook this up to the shader? I don't remember. I think we did. I think that's all done. Let me actually build.
Dingus.
Illuminate main needs an update. Oops. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. Okay, so we need to add to this that we need to write out to the address of render data for data shadow bias. Now it should build. Cool. All right, I'm just going to grab a new capture just to make sure that that data is going through as we expect. And then we can move on. Uh-oh. Crashed and didn't tell me why. That's pretty sweet. All right. Let me try that one more time because sometimes that does just happen. Okay, that's twice it's doing it now. There must be a seg fault somewhere. Okay, let's debug. Yep. Oh, assertion failure. Even better. Okay, so... What? Why are we asserting there? Scene is null. Huh? Oh, this is why. Gotta look up a little bit. Scene parsing failure. Oh, I bet I know what the problem is. This is the problem. Unexpected identifier F. Copy pasta issue. I can guarantee it. Because we do not need the F notation in our scene files. Dingus-oriented programming. For the loss. All right. There we go. All right. So let's go back to RenderDoc. All right. And we'll take a new capture. You don't need an equal sign? Nope. Oh, wait. Oh, interesting. I wonder how it interpreted that. That's interesting that it didn't balk at that, actually. That's very interesting. Okay, let's see if it made it all the way here, and then I'll kind of trace that back. That's actually kind of, I'm surprised that worked, actually. So I guess we can look at that one. That should be fine. And we'll go to, I guess we'll stay here, and we need to go to global settings. It read it in. I can't explain that one. Why did that work? That shouldn't have worked. That's awesome. It definitely shouldn't have worked. I guess I think I know why it worked, actually. Because technically speaking, thinking about the way that our parser works, this isn't really needed because it kind of just is like, it's treated as an equals, but it's not like, it's not actually parsed out that way. Like it's tokenized, but it doesn't actually get parsed. So essentially what we do is we have identifier, and then we have potential operations in here, and then value, and then it gets assigned. So essentially we skip this step, I'm thinking, and it just took the next thing that it found here because we didn't have that. That's interesting. Which technically means, I mean, I'd be willing to bet we could probably delete all of the equals, and we probably just don't need them. However, I do intend to eventually support this, you know? So when I go to support that, that's going to be an issue, right? Because we're going to have operator precedence and all that other stuff. Cool. I didn't even notice that because it worked. Equal signs only there for aesthetics. Yeah, exactly. You know, I've been using this format now for well over a year and never once ran into that or noticed it. So that's pretty cool. Nice unintended feature. Yeah, exactly. That's actually kind of hilarious. And it's only because I didn't wind up actually parsing it saying, hey, we need to have this equals sign here for assignment. It just kind of does it. Whoopsie. All right, let me do, I'm going to note that because that is actually a bug. I don't think I'm going to fix it anytime soon, but I do want to at least get it in here. Boy, I need to clean this list up too because there's stuff in here that's already been fixed. All right, I'm just going to put here. Bug. Case in assignment does not take into, or does not, I guess we could say, does not require equal sign, and just assigns anyway, will be an issue when other operators are added. Okay, so at least it's noted, so that way I can forget about it again and fix it in another year. Let's see. Writing to-dos are always the hardest part, 100%, yeah. You missed my MSAA question above. Okay, let me see. Sometimes I do miss things. Do you support MSAA? No, I don't. It's something I have plans to support in the future, but I don't support it right now. How do you set up your post-processing pipeline shaders? Do you resolve everything, including depth, which is an extension? Or do you do post-processing in multi-sampled space? You haven't really decided yet. The general theme of this project, though, is I try to avoid extensions. It's one thing to have like a debug extension that is almost guaranteed to be out there, right? But like most other extensions, I try to avoid them as much as possible, just because I want to support the widest array of hardware that we possibly can. So yeah, more than likely I will not go down a extension route, but I haven't fully decided how I want to do that yet, because the whole post-processing pipeline is going to be, and I use the term pipeline in sort of a Vulkan agnostic way here, but that's going to be a whole other set of features that we're going to add down the road. So I haven't fully decided how we're going to do that just yet. But good question. Thank you for the follow, by the way. Caught my first live stream. Awesome. Welcome over there on the YouTube side. How am I doing? I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Let's see. In Unity, you have to make a development build to attach render doc and get more info. But I have no idea about doing Vulkan labels. Okay. Yeah, so I don't know. That doesn't surprise me too much with the Unity thing. Yeah. And that kind of makes sense, right? Like probably on release builds here, we probably won't support it being attached either once we actually go to release it. Speaking of that, in terms of builds, like right now we kind of have debug and release, but I think we're going to have other builds that are sort of in between there. Like we might have a trace build that has like absolutely all types of debugging enabled and extra logs and all that kind of stuff. And then we might have another build which is kind of what release is now, but also still supports, hooks for like render doc and whatnot. And then we might have like a publish build or something like that actually has all of that kind of stuff turned off. Debug symbol stripped, all that kind of stuff. We'll have to see. We're quite a ways away from needing all those, so I haven't done them yet. All right. Well, now that we've discovered a unintentional feature of our scripting language, which is always awesome. Thank you for the follow, by the way, over there on the Twitch side. Let's see. So we had a couple of things. Why weren't our shadow maps working? I'm just trying to figure this out because I feel like it's going to be something that I've reversed somewhere or something that just isn't set properly. Because the stuff clearly is being rendered. Oh, you know what? I wonder if it's using the wrong projection matrix, perhaps. Although I don't see how that would have happened. I did see that one was passed. So Shadow map texture, okay. So we do that. Here's our render area, okay. Global UBO, so we have our view projections. Okay, I'm thinking that all should be calculated in here. Okay, so we default them all to map 4 identity. There should only be 4. Yep. And then we get the light view matrix and the orthographic matrix. None of this has changed either. So that should be fine. Okay. What did we have as far as pipeline state? So when we go to, let me go to this last one here, and we'll take a look at the okay, we are binding the correct textures for these things. Oh wait, maybe not. Oh, maybe that's part of the problem. Okay, interesting. So none of those look invalid to me. Oh, that model matrix isn't right, though. Oh, that actually is the problem. That's the problem. That shouldn't be a model matrix. That should be a lookup into the storage buffer. Why does that still have a model matrix? Did I not update the shader? Oh, and that data size might also be wrong. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's wrong. Okay, so wait a minute, that's global. No, that's going to be correct. The immediate's the only thing that would have changed. Yeah, okay. Static, shadow, static, mesh. Let's look at the vertex shader first. So this is transform index. We've already done this here. Didn't we do this on both? I'll bet I didn't. Yep. There's the issue. Or at least a issue. Okay. So let's do, you know what, let me just rebuild this because I don't think I changed any code, but let's just be on the safe side. Okay. So I'm going to look at the last cascade here. Okay, we do have something on our shadow map, which is awesome. So that's rendering now, and I'd be willing to bet if we switch to the second one, the first one may not have. Yeah, okay. And that's even coming from the direction that's like a top-down direction, so that actually looks... Okay, the first one doesn't have anything, but that's not a surprise given where the camera is. Okay, I think that means that we might be good as far as the shadow map generation is concerned then. I think that might have been the only issue. So let's actually just run this. And let's just head over to the tree here and see. I know the reflection is wrong. I'm aware of that. Yeah, it's still not shadowing correctly, but I think this is why, right? Like, I think there's a couple things going on here. I think, and actually, let me just switch back to this camera and move this guy over here on top of this other one and see if it projects. I don't think it's going to. Oh yeah, it does a little bit. Oh, that's interesting though. Okay. All right, I think I see the problem. So if you'll notice, that's got a lot of artifacts in it, right? And I think that's because, and I saw this in RenderDoc, and actually that's kind of what gave it away. For some reason, we are not updating the texture for our opaque meshes whenever we are rendering those to the shadow map, right? And we don't need to render those individually. We can just use one. So I think, let's see. That's going to be in this renderer. And let's see, we are doing, here's our cascades, right? Here's where we do each material grouping. These are the transparent materials, right? And then these are the opaque geometries. So I think what we're doing is we are skipping this step. And I think we can actually do, oh, here we go. So base color texture is default base color. Why is that not? Instance ID is the default instance. That should be working. What did I miss? So binding set 1, instance ID, binding index is 0, array index is also 0. It's not an arrayed texture. And then the texture itself, which should be this. Default base color texture name. Color texture. I think this one is just all white pixels. Let's see. Yes. So that is the one I want. I don't want this checkerboard pattern one. I want the default base color texture, which is all white pixels. That should be what gets bound here. And technically it should stay bound for the entire time. So we apply Did I do this wrong up here? Base color texture. Yeah. So instance ID, I wonder if this should actually be. We actually don't really even need this check, actually, because this check would have happened here. These are already split up by whether or not they're transparent. So we don't actually even need that at all. We don't need that check. Which means that can go away. We can just U32 in front of that one. Yeah, that should work. So in this case, we want to get the base color texture from the material itself when it's a transparent one so that we can sample its alpha. And if that texture is not loaded, then we use the default. And then we update, or we bind that texture and then update the binding set. So that should be correct, right? And then this is each material grouping. And then for opaque geometries, it doesn't matter how they're grouped because they all are going to use that default white texture. I wonder, though, we set this once. I wonder if I have to do it more than once. It doesn't make any sense, but let's try it. Should only have to be done once globally, but maybe we need this apply more than once. Actually, that might be what it is. So let's pull down render doc and we'll do a new capture. All right, so we'll take this, move it over here. All right, looks like we still got the same issue. Yeah, we do. Okay, let's find out why. I suspect, I strongly suspect it's not switching the texture like we think it is. So we at least know our shadow passes are working, so that's good. What we need to look at now is the forward pass, the standard scene pass, not one of the water planes. And let's see, I think it was this one. Oh, wait a minute, no. It is the shadow pass we need to look at. Crap, I don't know what cascade that is. I guess it doesn't matter. So when we draw this one, that's the leaves, right? So we have the pipeline state here. We can see that this image is bound to the base color texture. So that's fine. The problem is, I'll bet that's going to be the same when we do this one, and this one, and this one. Never changes. Sweet. Okay. Why? Because I'm pretty sure descriptor sets. So we bind these descriptor sets, right? We should always, so descriptor set 0 should be bound once. Descriptor set 1 should be bound once per material group, right? So there's one default material group that handles all of our opaque meshes. And then there's one per transparent material. Yeah, here we go again. So we have a bind descriptor set 1 here. Interesting indeed. Okay. I wonder if there's a bug in the way that our binding set apply works. So when we do, this is where that happens, right? So we have the renderer frame number, so we know the last time that was the descriptor set index with this use ID, or this really should be named instance ID. So that we know the last time that was bound. I think that is where the renderer frame number is held, right? So each instance of the binding set, which is essentially a set of descriptors within the descriptor set, right? An instance of descriptors. That only should be updated once a frame, right? So if the frame numbers don't match, then we go ahead and we do the update, loop through all the different types, update the descriptors as necessary, grab a count of how many we have, update them. Otherwise, we just do a bind of descriptor sets here, which we just bind one descriptor set. So no matter what happens, whenever we call this update and bind, which is essentially what this points to under the hood, we have this that gets called every single time. And maybe this, depending on whether it's already been updated for that frame or not. I don't see anything. This is the only thing that can block it from happening, is if the renderer frame numbers were to match, which means it has been updated this frame. Which that synchronization happens at the very last point. And I think there's only a couple of cases where we can actually return false. In fact, that might be the only one. Interesting. Okay, so I don't think the problem's here. Let's see. Oh, I got some messages to catch up on here. Let me see. Same here, trying to avoid extensions, but not being able to resolve depth is so annoying. That leaves me the latter option of working in multi-sampled space. You can't use sampler 2D with MS images, multi-sampled images, and you can't use sampler 2D multi-sampler with non-multi-sampler images, so writing shaders becomes annoying unless I'm missing something. Yeah, it's good. That's a good question. At some point I am going to be tackling that, but I don't know when that's going to be, because it's kind of like a post effects for me are kind of like something that I've put off for quite a while, because it's not really super important to like nail right away. I want to get the core game loop done first. At this point, I don't even know if I can properly solve my problem without GLSL preprocessor. That's possible. Can you not call sampler to DMs with one sample? Oh, okay. I think most of these messages are dealing around that. Yeah, I honestly don't know. I haven't looked into it. I've done it before, but not with Vulkan yet. So we'll see. You viewed the trees mesh and the vertex outs. Geoposition values ended up outside of the viewport. That's why the draw call wasn't affecting anything when you were inspecting different views. Wasn't sure that's the problem, so hesitated a bit. Fair enough. Little off topic, but I managed to avoid so many types of subscriptions in life. I assume you mean except, I think is what you type there, except water, electricity, and internet, maybe food, if it counts. But AI tools like Claude or ChatGPT or Perplexity feels like a must-have for mundane tasks. It's not a must-have at all. I don't pay for any of those things. It's really not. Claude free is more than enough prompts. Yeah, I mean, if you need that stuff, right? But like, what is so mundane that you can't just write it out, I guess, is the question. Depends on what you're doing, I guess. I don't trust it to even handle the mundane stuff for me, frankly. I was going to suggest possible layout differences, but I think they had the same layout based on RenderDoc. Unless you change pipelines, which aren't compatible, you shouldn't need to rebind a descriptor again. That's what I was thinking too, which is why I had this up here, because I'm not changing pipelines, right? So this binding up here should be enough, because literally I already have this split up to have all of my transparent, I should say, geometries with transparent materials up here in this loop. And then down here, my opaque ones are all here. So I should be able to bind this and just slam through it a bunch of times. But for some reason, it is not updating here. The only thing I can think of is, oh, wait a minute. We only have one transparent geometry. I know what the issue is, I think. I think I know what the problem is. I think it is what I thought it was, but not for the reason I thought it was. Oops. Yep, fixed. Fixed. Okay, so what the problem was is normally when we're rendering materials, I have like a specific group assigned by material handle, right? But this shader doesn't work that way. I have a predefined number of groups that I can have in the shader. And most of those groups, with the exception of one group, will go to transparent materials. However, I also have this running group array index, which was starting at 0, which basically meant it was taking the default group, which I'm using down here, which is 0, and it was overwriting it. So essentially what was happening here is it was hitting this, going, oh, I need to update this, which was group or instance ID 0. That was already updated for the frames and thus could not be updated again. And so I was coming down here and I was like, oh, let's use the default, which is also group 0. And so that's why it wasn't updating. So I switched this to start off at 1, reserving 0 for the default group, and that's what it was. Took me a while to get there, but I did figure it out. Been programming way too long today. Just had a dingus moment where I was calling string copy instead of string cat. Yeah, I've done that on a number of occasions for sure. I mean, this was definitely a dingus moment, right? There's literally a one character change to fix that bug. Those are some of the most annoying ones, I swear to God. Super annoying. I suspect that AI message was written by an AI. Maybe. Never know. The transparent mesh was rebinding with a different texture. Makes sense. Yeah, exactly. So it was basically just clobbering the group that I thought I had reserved and just using that as the first group instead. So, problem solved. Cool. All right. Curious what your thoughts are on GPU-driven rendering, modern geometry handling. I've thought about doing it at some point. The thing is with this engine, though, the reason I haven't done that is because I don't also know how to handle that properly with Direct3D and Metal. When I have plans to add both support in this engine. So I'd rather just kind of get it working the traditional way first, and then maybe if we go the modern route and I can find an agreeable way to do it across all three APIs, then I'll do it that way at some point. Did you learn how to code in college? No, I did not. I taught myself how to code. I've taken one programming class. I took one programming class in college, and it was a C++ class, and I could have taught it. Yeah, so I basically just, I discovered an old language called QBasic or Quick Basic. Came with MS-DOS back in the day, and that was the first language I ever kind of learned about. Came with all the manuals and stuff. And I started that when I was around 7, just because I liked the fact that you could input commands into a computer and it could make it do stuff, right? And I thought that was really neat. And Quick Basic had a lot of really cool things that you could do with it, and it was really a pretty simple language to use. So that was the first language that I learned, and I stuck with that one for quite a while until I eventually moved on to some other simpler ones. Like I moved over to Visual Basic at one point, obviously JavaScript, and then C# at one point when that came out in 2001, or actually, yeah, I think it was 2001. When that came out, I tried that for a little bit, and then I've also used C and C++ for a number of years. So, but yeah, I've taught myself everything that I've learned. I'm constantly reading stuff. Chalk it up to being a giant nerd and being stubborn, I guess. What did you study in college? Don't think I've ever asked. So it's funny. I did not go to college for programming. I went to college for game art and design. So it's an art degree. So yeah, not using that, which is one of the reasons I always say you don't have to have a degree necessarily to get into programming. You don't have to have it, because I have one that's totally unrelated and I've never used it. Not once. So, yeah, there's that. Do you have a corporate job? Yes, I do. Currently, anyways. Yeah. I've had a number of different jobs throughout. I basically just go kind of... I've had game dev jobs. I've done game dev contract work, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, in terms of work-life balance, corporate jobs are generally the way to go. And they pay a little bit better too. So that's what I'm doing now. Started college studying graphics design, moved to computer engineering later. Similar paths. Yeah, nice. I thought about doing that, but I was just like, do I really want to blow all that money again? You know, it's expensive. And my thought on that was no. I also toyed around with the idea of getting like a doctorate degree from like one of those super shady / crappy online, like, yeah, you can do this in 6 months or whatever. I thought about doing that one time just for the lulz, just so I'd have doctorate, and I thought that would be kind of funny, but I never wound up doing it because I'm like, I don't want to spend the money on that. It's a little expensive just for the lulz, you know. You get to code OpenGL at your job. That is pretty lucky. Yeah, I would love to be doing that. I've done WebGL before at my job, and I've done game engine work in the past. But yeah, public college here is free. Only reason I did that, wouldn't have otherwise. Yeah, I probably would have too. I definitely would have if that was the case. Yeah. Been seeing your commentary a bit recently on X, the everything app. Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Went to college for programming, but run an in-home daycare with my wife and doing side projects on my own. No, that's pretty cool. Nothing wrong with that at all. I mean, if it's lucrative and pays the bills, why not, right? Feels like the game dev is the most intense and the lowest paid IT field there could possibly be. Oh, no. No. There are worse, believe me. But yeah, game dev is pretty intense. I worked at an online gaming company for just under 5 years. Wrote game engines, their financial backend system, wrote a bunch of that stuff over that 5 years, and work-life balance over those 5 years just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And I was just putting in just crazy amounts of times. And I got tired of just having weeks that were minimally 70 hours long. It'd be one thing if I was getting paid for all of that, but then that wasn't really happening either. So game dev just feels so low pay because of the hours you have to put in compared to the pay. So that's part of it, right? Like there's lots of overtime required, but I've also had other jobs outside of game dev that had lots of overtime. The reason that game dev seems low is because it is low, because there's lots of people that want into it. And when you have a supply and demand issue like that, where there's lots of supply of people wanting to get in and not so many jobs, they can go, hey, we can just, pay people less and they'll take it anyways because they want to get in. That's literally the way that works. But yes, it's also offset by the crazy hours you have to put in, depending on the place you go into. They're not all like that, right? But yeah. I pause Slack notifications outside work hours. Yeah. I just shut my machine off, frankly. Close Slack after work hours, yeah. And I do not put that stuff on my phone. I worked a job where I had to do on-call. And it was brutal. Like I was getting... right before I left that place, I had a couple weeks where I was getting between 40 and 50 calls a week. And these are calls where you wake up in the middle of the night, and I say wake up because sometimes I was already awake handling something else. But it's like you wake up at 2 a.m. and have to fix a database issue in production. It's just never again. Been there, done that. Yeah. Damn near cost me my marriage too. So yeah, it was bad. Because it wakes me up, it woke her up. We both are miserable. It's just not worth it. Should have wrote better software to begin with. Yeah, well, that was the thing. Was I didn't even have any control over that. I had to fix stuff that I had to fix. I had to resolve issues for crappy software that I didn't even have control to actually fix the right way. Yeah, it was brutal. I think support engineers have to deal with customers always on call and pager duty and are paid less than SEs and SDEs. Yeah, I mean, I was a software engineer and I still had to do that stuff. We couldn't get out of it. So, yeah, that's a question I ask in interviews going forward now. I'm just like, does this have on call? Because if it does, it's a waste of both of our times. Just nope, I'm out. This is not worth it to me anymore. I mean, it was one thing when I was in my 20s, but that ship has sailed, my friend. Yeah. So that's that. Let's see. I guess we got 10 more minutes. I wonder if there's anything else I want to tackle for tonight or if I want to just leave it for tomorrow. And yes, I do say tomorrow because we did miss a stream last night. Because I got sick over the weekend and lost my voice for the first half of the week. And yesterday I did have my voice back, but it wasn't really all the way back, and it felt strange still. So I just decided not to stream last night. Give my voice a little bit of an extra break, and come online tonight and stream. And gonna do a makeup stream tomorrow. So. You're almost in your second 20s. Does that mean you're almost in your 40s? Is that what that means? First time chatter, welcome. Oh, Daniel Lowe, thank you for the, did I pronounce that right? I probably messed that up, but thank you for the gifted tier 3 sub. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you very much. That's really big. I appreciate that. Thank you. Technically on call for a company I did a little side project for a few years ago. There's nothing quite like getting a call at 2:30 a.m. from a panicking CEO. Yeah, I don't miss that. Don't miss that at all. That's what that means, yeah. Misclicked your name. Need to do it again. That's very funny. I like that. That's a good one. I don't even know if I haven't even seen Magetz too. That's very funny. I don't even know if he's on here tonight. I don't think I've seen him in chat. That's very funny. Well, anyways, thank you for the support. I really appreciate that. All right. But yeah, if you mean your second 20s, then I just crossed that bridge or crested the hill myself. So, at the ripe old age of 40, I can also make that joke as well. How very bold of you, worth a shot. That's funny. I'm expensive, though, so I know when my phone rings, I know something has gone horribly wrong. Yeah, that's fair enough. Let's see. Hello, I've completed the Vulkan tutorial. I'm very new to Vulkan. Wondering your opinion on making a game in pure Vulkan, thinking of targeting 1.2. Are most players able to play it? 1.2 is pretty safe, yeah. 40 is where it's at, yeah. I would agree. I agree with that. Oh, wow, the hype train thing was like super late. It just now showed up on my screen. That's funny. I think Twitch is tripping. OpenGL 1.0. OpenGL 1.1 for maximum support. Yeah, I know. Oof. I would not want to write code in old school OpenGL anymore. It's kind of annoying, actually. But yeah, 1.2 is pretty safe, and it's also a good mixture of good hardware support and being able to get around some of the annoying things that 1.0 made you do. So yeah, I would say 1.2 is a good place to start. Even 1.3 these days is pretty good unless you're targeting mobile, I would say. There's a website that lists all graphics cards and their supported API level. Yes, that is... Do I have it bookmarked? What was it? I thought I had it bookmarked. Apparently not. Well, yeah, I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. So that website doesn't appear to be aggregated data. GPU info, maybe that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, this one. Yeah, I do wonder how accurate this is, but as far as from what I've been able to see anyways, it's pretty accurate, reasonably accurate. I don't know how up to date it is though. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's like a way to safely sort of say, you know, what am I going to be losing? Can you do less than 1.2? Does that work? No, I don't think so. Or we can do 1.1, I guess. So yeah, if you look at this, like these are all of the things that are known to not support that, which looks like mostly mobile hardware. So if you're targeting desktop platform, I wouldn't worry about it. Yeah. Yeah, this is mostly, I mean, there's some really old graphics cards in here as well, but like most of this, like HTC, Huawei, like these are, yeah, a lot of this stuff is mobile. So I don't know. I wouldn't put too much thought into it if you're not planning on supporting mobile. OpenGL 1.x is a different breed though. It didn't have index buffers. I think it had just introduced or was about to introduce VBOs. You mostly declared vertices in immediate mode. Yeah, that sounds about right. Did 1.1 have VBOs? I don't think it did. I might be wrong on that though. It's been too long since I've used it.
You dingus.
Yeah, it was very ugly and super slow. I hated the way it handled matrices too. 1.5 introduced VPO. Okay, I was going to say 1.1 seemed too old for VBOs. 1080 is actually up to 1.4. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me too much. 1.4 is a little too new for me to support, I think. There's not quite enough support for it for me to fully switch to it. But probably soon. By the time this goes out, definitely. Just do a text adventure. Yeah, there you go. All right. All right, so I think that's probably where I'm going to go ahead and end the stream for tonight. Oh, the hype train completed at level 2, 50%. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, that's going to end tonight. We're going to do a makeup stream tomorrow night. So we will be back tomorrow night for a rare Friday night stream. Let me see who we can raid. And while I'm looking for somebody to raid, if you haven't already, I would greatly appreciate a follow on the Twitch side and or the YouTube side, or if you're so inclined, both. I'm trying to grow the channel. My main goal of this is to hopefully inspire people to get into some of this lower level stuff and make engines and make cool stuff and provide, most importantly, competition to the big boys out there, the big three. Because I think the more competition we have in this space, the better, because that drives ingenuity and keeps new stuff coming out all the time. That's new and awesome, and new and unique ways of doing things. So let me see. Is there... Not a whole lot tonight. Let's see. Should I try Z.A. Shaw again? I know last time we wound up raiding each other at the same exact time. Let's see. I'm just having one more look through here, but I think that's probably going to be... I think that's probably going to be what we're going to go with. Yeah, I think that's what we're going to do. Oh, where did it go? Oh, the dang screen refreshed. Come on now. I love and hate this new UI. All right, here we go. So we'll go ahead and kick off the raid. And yeah, we'll go see what he's up to. And then, thank you guys again so much for being here. I appreciate you guys. And I'll see you guys on the next stream. Have a good one.